Yeah, hello everybody. Long-time listener, part-time caller here. I've missed the past several of these, but I've been around for a while. And a few years ago, John was kind enough to join us at an annual business summit that we do called The Gathering. I'll put the link in the chat, but it's cultgathering.com.
An awesome.
It's a chance for us to sort of celebrate businesses that have achieved above average levels of success and significance. We affectionately call them cult brands, although I appreciate that's a provocative term. But for the past decade, we've been sort of honoring the best 10 or 12 brands each year that have achieved these above average levels of fandom. Brands like Yeti, Porsche, Beats by Dre, the Los Angeles Lakers, etc. And in addition to celebrating the brands, we try to bring thought leaders and provocative ideas to CEOs and CMOs to try to reimagine not just what they do to engage with customers, prospects, and staff, but how they do it. And John's, talk on the open talent and the gig economy and our own company's sort of sponsorship of the event Communo and making sure that people are aware of alternatives to the traditional staffing model coming out of the pandemic. It's only gotten bigger. We get more and more questions. We have more and more HR professionals coming to ask questions about it. And so I wanted to make sure you all were invited. And I'll also put a discount code here in the thing as an OA member. You can save several $100s off of a pass, but it is selling out. It's kind of late. It's happening here in October in Banff, Alberta, but it's kind of like a destination wedding. It's a beautiful time of year to be in a remarkable part of the world. And if your businesses are interested in being there, showing up in maybe a more overt way from a business development standpoint to network with these brands, there's about 1,000 business owners and brand leaders that attend. You can DM me offline, and I'm happy to figure out a way to make it even more pervasive for you. But at a minimum, I'd encourage you to come and help shape the conversation around what the best brands in the world do to make sure that they're optimizing their workforces and their customer experiences.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Yeah, it was one of the best conferences I've ever attended. I get a chance to do a lot of work around that, but it was kind of the highlight of the pre-COVID era. So thanks for sharing that, Chris. Thanks for everybody for being here today. I'm super psyched on the conversation, but before we dive into that, maybe we should just go to breakout rooms and do our traditional thing. Because that's my favorite part of this thing anyway. All right, well, let's jump in. I'm super psyched for the conversation today. I was reflecting on, Jerry Wind. I don't know, for those of you guys who attended last week, it was a really amazing conversation, and Jerry's done some great work. Jerry and I go way back, from about probably 2010 or so. And it's really fun to kind of see his career. He's just such a great mentor for me and has done so much great work. So he has this great perspective on things. And, I was reflecting on that yesterday when I had a call with the platform and, marketing content platform. As many of you guys know, I'm kind of from the advertising marketing world, and where I built platforms and sold a few of those. But I talked to this CEO that I know really well, and he said, coming into the year, they were, tens of millions of dollars of revenue, cranking along, creating, they have a freelance network of creating marketing content, and they will be less than half the revenue this year. And so they've had to cut their staff about 75% to try to figure out how to use AI tools, this kind of hybrid model. And it was such an interesting conversation. I think, these, as I look at it, because I'm an old dog now, and I look at kind of the history of things. I think we see this, right? We see this all the time, being in the magazine publishing business. I was always trying to figure out how to innovate and do, I own this magazine called Women's Sports and Fitness. And I was really intrigued in 1995 about doing how-to videos online. So you had to go shoot the video in analog tape. You had to go digitize it. You had to go put it up online, and then you hoped that the customer could watch a chunky video on their dial-up, right? And that cost me about $10,000 to do. At the same time, I could just call up a client like Nike and sell a $10,000 ad in about 20 minutes for women's sports and fitness. So my business model didn't allow me to get to the future, even though I desperately wanted to kind of be an online publisher. It just wasn't possible. And I think we see the same thing here, right? We see this shift happening, especially for small to medium-sized businesses first. And I think platforms like my friend who I talked about yesterday. And so I'm really, really excited to have some, folks that are, out there, right, at the edge of this stuff. We've got, Cory Hymel, VP of Product and Research at Gigster, Craig Short, co-founder and CTO at Gigged.ai, and then Tom O'Malley, founder and CEO of Current. And I think, as we've thought through how do we help the community, as you guys know, I've got this book coming out from Harvard called Open Talent. And, I was really frustrated with Harvard in that it's taken so long. From the beginning, it's taken about 3 years. But one of the really serendipitous things that's happened is that our lab at Harvard wrote a book called Competing in the Age of AI 3.5 years ago. And I got to do a lot of research there. So as things started emerging at the beginning of this year, we were able to kind of do a lot of thinking and writing at the lab, and then put a lot of that stuff into the Open Talent book. So really trying to melding these two things together. What's the effect of AI in this kind of open talent freelance marketplace? And so, what I hope to do, and what we've talked about, from Brandon and I and the rest of the team, is that we've got to really focus. The idea of the book is really, and the reason I did the book was really to create common language and common process around the adoption of open talent. And so, going forward with the community or the collective, kind of the paid membership side of things, this is the free membership side of things. We're really trying to focus on, helping platforms get to the future in these kind of super disruptive times, right? We've got AI and new technologies, a lot of the funding's dried up, or at least shifted. And so there's lots of things we need to work together as a community to get to the future. So I'm especially, like I said, excited about this conversation and having these guys on the call. So maybe I could just have each of you guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump in. I've got some questions, but let's just start with Cory, then Craig, and Tom.
Yeah, of course.
I think Tom might not be here yet, so if it's just Cory and Craig, we'll just go from there.
Yeah, no, so super happy to be on.
I'm here. Oh, you're here. Okay, Tom, thanks.
Yeah, so super happy to be here.
Yeah,
and appreciate the opportunity to chat. Really enjoyed the conversation last week, and I think kind of spawned this. So happy to discuss. But I'm the VP of Product and Research here at Gigster. We're fascinated about how distributed and freelance teams work and operate, and building tooling, and some of that being AI and how they work. So happy to kind of pull back the curtain and share some of the knowledge that we've gotten over the past 10 years or so.
That's awesome. Thanks. And Craig?
So I'm more of a newcomer. We've been going for 2 years. 2 years last July, this July actually we've been running. So I'm co-founder of Gigged.ai, and we're both an open talent marketplace and an internal marketplace. So our open talent marketplace is used by the norm startups, enterprises to hire on-demand talent. The internal talent marketplace, we're looking at how we can work with enterprises to see what key skill sets they have internally and help them hire or put the right person into the right role internally. And they can also use that to hire externally as well. So we've got 2 platforms to kind of talk about what our uses of AI today.
That's great. And then Tom O'Malley, I think you're on the iPhone.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom O'Malley. So I spent a career in enterprise tech, left a strategy role at Oracle to start this platform called Current. And basically, we just
Oh, Tom, we're losing you there. Maybe let's start off with Cory, and then we'll get to you, Tom, last, and Cory and Craig, and kind of, and then you'll get a chance to maybe get to some better reception. But Cory, you want to just take it?
10 months ago, we were using just a little bit of machine learning, but it was mostly like gig economies and some automations and gamification. Sorry, how about now?
Yeah, let's, hey, Tom, if you get to a better location, let's just wait till then and do the intro and roll in, but you're cutting in and out. So let's just jump back to Cory. Cory, just give us a taste of what you're thinking. I mean, one of the things I love about Gigster is you guys have been around for a while and doing this for a while and have been really successful at it. And I'm sure, well, it's exciting times. There's, like every business I've started in the past, you don't become conservative until you have something to conserve. So it's hard to change business models when you're successful, right? It's really, really difficult. And so I'm really psyched to hear kind of how you guys are thinking about this and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so when we started, and it definitely changed over time, but we were founded on the belief that the future is distributed and is remote, and we saw that open talent was a way to infinitely scale, right? Like you have this ability to scale beyond anything that you could traditionally do. But what I don't think the market talks about enough, or people talk about enough, that we find really interesting is that how do you infinitely manage, right? Like how can you create this infinite scaling factor through tech to manage the human cloud or the open talent? And that's what we think is the real kind of problem, and the problem that we find super interesting. So over the past 10 years, like we've been like obsessed with this concept or this idea of that, how do you infinitely manage? We think that it's been solved on how do you access. So it's pretty easy to tap into the global freelance economy. But how do you really create a platform or tooling that lets hiring managers or managers at a company scale an infinite amount of teams? And so I'll give you kind of like the high level, and happy to go into either one of them more, how we use AI. And it's one example is applied, and then the other is one that's in research, but I brought it up on the last call and I think it was pretty interesting to people. So the first one, right, when we think about how do you infinitely manage, it's about being predictable, and predictable about a team's potential or stat for success. So we created this model in partnership with Stanford and Berkeley, that what it does is basically is able to measure cognitive distance between two individuals, or cognitive distance between a team as a whole. And what we found that was really interesting about this with remote teams is that based on kind of where they are in a software delivery milestone, you actually want different levels of cognitive distance. And with this this model, we trained on almost 1 million Slack messages that we had with over 120 different teams from around the world. And what we saw was that it is a very good, this cognitive distance is a very good lead indicator for if a team will be successful at the end of a 2-week milestone. And so that's one, and happy to share the white paper and stuff that comes out of it. The second one that is more on the research side that I do think it's also interesting is understanding, and we're doing another white paper now on like how much AI is too much AI, specifically when it comes to using AI models to manage relationships, and AI models for coordinating and planning, which we have some like early models done, but we actually decided to take a step back and ask our network and start asking people, when does Big Brother come in? And then there's some backlash, and the initial data is like pretty interesting. We wanted to understand how much better an AI model needs to be than a human for people to start using it. And the initial sample set, it came out that for an AI model that manages relationships, that it needs to be about like 9.5% better than a human, and that for an AI model that does coordinating and planning, it needs to be about 17% better than a human, basically for people to start welcoming it into their lives. So we're super happy with the results from there. And this is also another one that we're doing with Stanford and University UPenn. But we'll be happy to share when that comes out. So yeah, happy to answer questions about it, but would like to turn it over to the other folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Cory. Hey, Craig, why don't you take it away? I've had a lot of amazing conversations with Rich, and I just want to, I really am excited. It's interesting because my conversations with Rich have been so similar to the book that I'm writing. So one of the things that we've done in Open Talent and the paradigm that we're suggesting from the lab is our framework is that, Open Talent really comprises three legs, right? It's external talent clouds, which so many folks are focused on, internal talent marketplaces, then open innovation capabilities. That I think if you're really going to do a holistic open talent program, you have to have those three legs. And so when I was talking to Rich the other day, I was really excited to hear you're both attacking the internal and external paradigms. But obviously we can talk about that, but more importantly today, just talking about how are you applying AI across your whole ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think the way that we're looking at it is it's from like the skills part. So from ours, like everything's like based on like the skills. So you're trying to find someone, you want to find someone for a deliverable. We need to find the key skills for that deliverable. So what is that? So from the early days, we had like a chatbot that like helped extract someone like a statement of work from the end user in a good way. So a lot of our team, Rich included, are like ex-recruiters. Rich helped build up like a large recruitment agency. So there was like a certain way to get the best statement of work down on paper to help like hire the right person. So from the early days, we only had, that was our only little bit of AI. Then we started just adding on like some matching algorithms that also helped learn like the kind of key skills. So what we learned from the very early days was that SMBs don't actually know the kind of key skill sets. They know what they want in the end. So it was not as easy for them to find that right person. So one of the examples that I like to tell is that someone came onto the platform. They're a large textile company. I think they're like, the fame is that they like created the curtains and the cushions for the White House or something like that. But they're a family-run business. That's what they do. They don't have any like technology and like within house. They put on a gig for basic wireframes for their new website. That's what they were looking for. But someone along the way told them that they had to have Django as a skill. So like Python. Now, like we were like, then there's no one going to be out there that's like a UI designer that's also coding Python at the end of it. It's just not going to be a thing. We had a couple, but again, like they wouldn't have found the best person. So what we looked at from the early days is to help the kind of like the SMBs. Well, we're lucky enough to have enterprises from the very early days, but they came and they knew they had big technology like sectors within like their company, departments that can help. They're used to writing these job specs. The SMBs didn't, and when they were going through it, it's just, yeah, they weren't matching to the right people. So yes, we've got like this platform. So what we had to do was really focus our AI on, right, what are the people like, what do the key skill sets? If you say you're a UI designer, what's everyone doing? Like I remember like only 3-4 years ago, like it was like a program called Sketch. Sketch was the biggest thing and it was the trending kind of like platform before Figma. Everyone that I knew in UI was sending me Sketch files. What happened next was it's then Figma starts coming in. So it's again to try help like the end users as well. This is what we are seeing an uprising in. So our matching algorithm not only will help match the people, but also help with the skill sets in demand and give like the kind of updates of, yes, this person is like working in that, but we can also send them a message to say, look, UI designers are now adding this as a skill. Is this something you should be looking at to kind of further your career and like that kind of piece? So that's our main focus on UI, and it's been the main one from probably like day one.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Tom O'Malley, back to you. You got a better connection now?
How was this? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. That's way better, dude. Thanks.
Okay. No, sorry about that. I'm a single parent now, and today happens to be the first day of school, and this was the only chance to get vaccines done. So
yeah, family first.
No control over it, but thanks everybody. I'm happy to be here. Just brief intro. I came out of large enterprise, was a strategy lead at Oracle for some time and left to create this platform called Current. Basically saw a window to help people connect with expert focus groups to do product market fit better. So companies use our platform to engage with their B2B target audiences in groups of, say, 15 to 30. And they're basically just talking to them about unmet needs and what's next and what the expectations about the future and what needs to be true about ideal solutions. So, yeah, I've been doing this for about 7 years now. And I'd say up until about 10 months ago, until the LLMs landed on the planet, we were largely around automating that process, centered online workflow, using gamification, using a little bit of machine learning to go across the web and find people. But it's been nothing short of a game changer the past 10 months.
Great. Well, thanks, Tom. Let's open it up to questions. I'd love to, I'm going to call on some people to start because I think it's important that we get kind of a diversity of inputs. Hey, Sean from Field Nation, I know, one of the things I love about what you guys are doing is so interesting to have this kind of, field workers out there that you can deploy. It seems like there's many interesting things that AI could do for you guys or to help your clients find the exact specific skill they need out in the field. Are you guys playing around with AI, and what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, we've started some AI use cases, really more, at least initially, around removing friction from the buyer experience using the platform, sort of, as compared to the next easiest alternative they have, which for the most part are third-party subcontractors. So we're looking at things like helping you using AI to help find a better way to match requirements with specific skill sets, with specific talent. But I think, in the background, there's also another work stream that we want to look at. How can we incrementally use AI to improve what we're doing today? And then there's this other work stream is, how are we going to use AI to reimagine how people consume this platform and these deliverables in 3 years or in 4 years or in 5 years? So we're taking a look at it from a couple different standpoints.
Yeah, I love it. Now I'm going to call on old Steve Rader. Steve, you're the OG, man. You've been doing this longer than anybody. What do you and I have had so many great conversations around kind of the adoption and changes, and what are you seeing from the NASA perspective in your kind of your lofty position as an OG that's seen this all roll out?
This is just it's another tool, and it's an amazing tool. And I'm really anxious to see. What's great is I've heard like 5 different ways people are actually starting to apply this, which is exactly right. It's a fundamental kind of game-changing piece. I was really interested in what Cory was saying. I've had some great conversations with Cory recently. I hadn't heard you talk, Cory, about the relationship management piece. I thought that was really interesting because I think, especially in the open innovation world, the formation and management of teams and relationships as part of that is going to be one of the things that's going to activate a whole new level of innovation, right? Because teams always work better. And so if you can match and activate people around a problem and problem solving, that's going to be key. And I can see that same thing in the open talent, where we're looking at a lot of how do you get a person, but if you can put a whole team together that has worked together before, has trust, has, and seeded with diversity and the right skills matched to the problem that come to bear, that's a new superpower, right? That's going to be this stuff on steroids that we've currently got. So helping people to be better and teams to be better at executing, I see as kind of the future of this whole industry. And I think we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg of where it can go. So it's great to hear how people are experimenting with it. And the only other thing I'll add is, one of the most interesting things I saw Tom ever do was kind of embed learning in the platform, where he would bring people in and kind of train them as part of the freelance process. And I see this in the future of how AI is used to kind of help people with this upskilling and reskilling, that that helps people adapt to this kind of wave of tech of new skills that's needed. And I think that honestly saves the world, right? Because that's the problem, where labor has to be adapting to this rapid change. And these are the kinds of things we got to do to make that happen. So was that lofty enough, John?
Awesome, man. No, I love it. Yeah, it's always good. Thanks, Steve. Hey, I'm going to call on San. San, you always, you and I've had over the years so many amazing conversations about big cultural themes, like shifting culture around things. And you always done so much great, work at the UN and World Economic Forum and these big bodies that, really are thinking about these kinds of big global changes. What, in the context of our community, and how do we use this new powerful tool to kind of really accelerate things? But what are the cultural ramifications of that? Where's your head at on that stuff?
It just sounds like too many bottles of mezcal, John.
A few of those.
But yeah, actually, I was fortunate enough to do the breakout with Tom, and was fascinated by the project. And I think just building on the conversation from last week, the notion of access to intelligence in order to synthesize. I think as a creative leader, it's as much it's people always think about creativity as something new, but I really think about it as combining things and editing things and synthesizing. And for me, what really resonated about the conversation last week was this notion that AI actually positioned correctly is not a threat to individuals. It's actually a way for individuals. It's a threat to organizations. It's a way for individuals to build the intelligence, build the response time, build the kind of like the institutional, if you like, insight that organizations take for granted, but do that, in a way that's very, very fast and quick. And I was talking to Tom because, every day, my first hour of every day is just synthesizing content, and because I never know what question I'm going to be asked later on that day, and the notion of a sort of an AI panel of futurists that I could tap into at any given moment would just completely transformational, I think, for a whole generation of creative leaders. So the excitement for me is that this comes back down to the reason this community is so important to me, which is fundamentally it's about a belief in the power and capacity of human creativity, of every single one of us.
Man, I totally agree. That was really articulate. Thanks, San. It's interesting because one of the ways that I've been starting to use, AI is to do first drafts of my articles. And one of the things that I'm super fortunate, and I was telling Dina this, this stage of my career that I've probably written, 4,000 blog posts that are all kind of publicly available somewhere. So usually I have a long prompt, and then I'll say, write this in the style, or in the style of Harvard Business Review and in the voice of John Windsor. And essentially it's a tool to reach back and look at all that great stuff that that Alex Bogusky and I did with Baked In at Crispin, or some of the thoughts we had around brand, and synthesize all that stuff. It's like me having this amazing intelligence to look at my own historical stuff and pull it all forward and contextualize it to this moment. And it's such a powerful tool, right? That synthesization for me, it's really amazing. So.
Yeah, and just a very, very quick build, going back to what Cory was saying. I mean, I feel like today when we do it, what you get back is sort of a really helpful research assistant.
Yep.
But as an expert, that, okay, that's not really the insight or whatever, but it gives me, a territory to sort of like quickly get my brain into, especially if I haven't had my first coffee. But, just the rapid growth of it, I can imagine, project 6 months, 8 months, nine, a year from now, you're actually going, well, that's like peer level insight. And then, who knows where that goes from there. But again, I don't see it as a threat. I just see it as how do we just use this as as sort of a part of our toolbox?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to call on John Healy, because John, you always have such amazing, insights into the staffing industry and how, how things are looking, some of the associations you're on the board of, like, how are people thinking about it in the traditional staffing realm?
Oh, I think, thanks, John, but I think traditional staffing is trying to get their hands around a lot of it. And I think many of the large organizations are going to be challenged by their own internal corporate engines that are scared of some of the tools that are out there. But what I'd rather kind of hit on quickly is an encouragement for everyone to get involved with their school systems locally to talk about this. I was at an event with a bunch of educators, and they talked about, this phone that we've all got and all our kids have, and all that we can do with it. And then the question was, do you let kids use this in school? Everyone said, of course not, that's cheating. And they said, well, what do the kids do with it? Well, they're going to talk to someone else. They might text a friend, phone a friend, find out from someone else what they're answering. And then they might research stuff. They might Google it. And then they said, but wait a minute, what are the biggest skills that we struggle to find inside businesses? We struggle to find people who know how to communicate effectively and who know how to use the resources. So the exact thing that kids have a capability to do, to learn, that we all need as we grow our businesses, is being called cheating in schools. And so there's this need to really start rethinking how we use some of the tools and the technologies that are out there with us. Is something we can't just leave for ourselves. We got to teach the next generation down, and those who are teaching that generation to adapt, so that as kids come into our workplaces, that we're fully engaging them and appreciating all that they know how to do.
I love that, John. And you and I've had so many amazing conversations about, thinking about not, innovation, not from a small business to a large business perspective, but from a, business to consumer mindset that we all have, right? Like it's easy for us to all like go on when our babysitter says, pay me Venmo, and we don't know what it is. We actually download Venmo. We don't think about the Chinese, the specter of some hacker owning that app or anything, but we just, download it, hook it up to our bank, pay the person. But that would never happen in the context of a business for any size, right? And so I think that's this shift of like, how do we use the modern tools in the context of education and a more kind of archaic system is a really, really important thing. I'm gonna ask one more person, then I want to get back to the panelists and really dig in a little deeper, but I'm just gonna call on Steve King. Steve, you're always out doing lots of research, and especially around remote work and digital nomads and what the freelancers are doing. I'm sure you're starting to dig into, in some of your more recent research, what effect is AI having on careers and freelancers' lives. Any insights you could add?
Yeah, we've been diving into AI for a while, and we have a bunch of data back that we'll be publishing soon. But basically, what we're seeing is most freelancers say that they're actually experimenting, at least, with Chat-GPT. And the awareness levels are unbelievable. And one of the issues that you have to sort through here are what we call false positives. I mean, it just can't be true. The numbers we're getting, a lot of people are just caught up in the hype and saying, yeah, I'm doing that. But when you get under the hood, we are finding a pretty rapidly growing share of freelancers and independent workers who are actually embracing different forms of Chat-GPT stuff, whether it's Bard or OpenAI's, and actually integrating them into their work. And so far, most are reporting, improvements in productivity in the 10 to 20% range. We've done a little bit of ethnographic work where we actually watch them. I hate that work, but we actually watch them and try to figure out what it really is. And it's definitely showing productivity improvements. I think it's, a lot of people are saying this, but I think it's going to be very true. The people that are embracing it are going to thrive, and the people that aren't embracing it are going to struggle against the people who are embracing it. So we're encouraging everybody to embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's the really important point here, right? Like that's going to be the divide, those people that jump in and start doing it. And I think the other thing is that we've all got to kind of be vulnerable and transparent, that none of us really know what this future is. So we've got to come together as a community to figure this out and really be willing to share, our learnings and the tricks of the trade, but do that through community. Thanks so much, Steve. Hey, listen, I'm going to jump back to the panelists, Cory, Craig, and Tom, and just ask, like, what problems have you been encountering as you kind of thinking about these kinds of things? I'm like anything new, right? There's lots of exciting new stuff that's happening, but obviously you run into some areas that's like, whoa, that kind of opened up Pandora's box. What the hell are we going to do about that? Why don't we start off with you, Cory?
Yeah, you mean just to make sure I understand the question, you mean specifically with generative AI?
Yeah, specifically with generative AI. Yeah. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I guess my perspective is any new technology, can be seen as like such an accelerator, but obviously it opens up, issues, right? It makes us rethink like what we're doing, how we're doing it. Are we doing the right thing? Is it ethical? All those kinds of things. I mean, what have you encountered?
Yeah, so like I think something that's interesting that's actually come up both from individuals in our network, right? The people that work for us, but also on the consumer side is that, I get asked the question a lot of, like, is this going to replace my job? Are you going to scale back the number of engineers we have in our network? Customers asking, like, is this going to automate out people? And the answer is yes, right? And I think and I usually give it as yes, it's going to replace jobs because that's what any new innovation does, and that's the point of innovating, right? But it's also creates a vast number of new ones, and I think that from the ethical and responsible side that we try to take and look at is to understand that if it is replacing and/or optimizing work that someone does today, what does that future look like for them? Like, what's the upskill opportunity? If it's an entry-level engineer that maybe don't need anymore, how can you teach them about prompt engineering or something else, like some other complex cognitive tasks that AI can't do? But from the broader market side, I think that is a big area that we have to continuously keep a pulse on and stay empathetic to. But I am of the firm belief that it will wipe out a lot of jobs, again, as any new innovation should. It's what electricity did to coal and stuff. It's what, to the oil industry. It's what cars did, the horse and buggy industry, et cetera, et cetera. But it will create a lot of new ones. And so making sure as thought leaders, we paint the picture of what that better future is and what future jobs could look like.
I love that. Thanks, Cory. Craig, what are you running into?
So I thought there's not been anything too major like that for us. The issues that we've seen is that everybody's been loving using like the generative AI. Like they come on and it's just like, let's just click this and it creates a nice project title for you, etc. So we've got like a description creator that helps like create like a nice description. It helps you with pick the right skills, etc. If you don't know what it is that you're looking to do, it takes it from like the title and it takes it from like a short description to create. But what's happening is, like, now that we've got loads of them going out, what's happening is that a lot of these are actually quite similar, and it's taken it away from the kind of personal side of like the business. So it's like when someone could be doing, I don't know, they might work in betting or they might work in finance, they might work somewhere else. It's kind of like taken away from like what it is like they're doing, and it is very generalized. So a lot of like the descriptions that are going out are quite generalized. It is helping find the right skill sets for it. But then it's slowing down, I think, the process of the getting to know that business. So like what it is that you're going to be going in. So if I use again, like the textile company, when they go in, like people are like, wow, like they have no technology, there's no website here, there's nothing already. They just have a nice description on like what they're doing. So it's been more of like that side from like the generative AI for us. And it's like, how do we get people to use it? And I think a few people have already mentioned it. It's like, how do we get people to use it as like a tool? It's to help. It's not the press that button, walk away from it and leave it. It is to use it as that crutch, that tool, that how do you get going? How do you get started? I think you mentioned it yourself, John. It's like that first draft to help rather than just that click, use it. It's just done all the work for me and like pause, play kind of thing. So that would be it from us, I think.
Yeah, good. That's great points. Thanks, Craig. Hey, Tom, what are you seeing? What are kind of the issues that you're running into?
Yeah, it's not exactly Pandora's box, but I think if there's one sort of aim that we have is for it to be more critical. Like we find that we make GPT calls, we get too kind of responses, like it's being too kind. And so getting it to think more critically is no matter how we change and shape the calls, it still tends to fare on the forgiving. And yeah, I think it's just because it's 1.0, and we're going to have to just wait for better or different models to arise. I also think the challenge is you were feeding it. We don't rely on LLMs to provide us information. We allow it to distill information we're giving it, and it doesn't really. It tends to favor larger data sets. So I think that's another thing too, is that it can overemphasize something in a small data set, and so without a human also sort of checking it, it can go miss the point, forest for the trees kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's just early days with the technology, but it's just so promising. And it even if it does an 80% job, I think somebody on the call said that it needed to do like a 10x better or 17x better. Faster is better also. And so even though the quality isn't necessarily better than a human at first go, it's just so fast that it removes a lot of the lift for the next person to come in and eyeball it and clean it up. So but yeah, haven't really encountered a Pandora's box yet. And we definitely have been encountering a lot of enterprises, new teams that are looking for that in how we use the calls. We've been to a couple of AI security reviews and such. So it's definitely on the radar, large enterprise, to look for those, really, I think the crux of your question, but nothing surfaced yet.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to ask one last question, and this is to everybody, but I think, the question would be like, if 1 year from now we were to do the same kind of follow-up meeting on the same topic, generative AI, what will we be talking about? Where will we be? Maybe just to kick off, Cory, I'll ask you, and then anybody else, or Craig and Tom, anybody else who wants to jump in. But I think that's a real question, right? Like maybe last September, you think about it, right? Like a year ago, nobody was even having this conversation. Nobody had budgets for generative AI, and all of a sudden here we are. It's dominating the investment space. It's dominating the conversation and where we're going to go.
Yeah, so I think in a year from now we won't be talking about it. I think that the consumer adoption cycle is so fast now, but what I do believe is going to be a big topic conversation, especially as these things continue to grow, assuming that they continue to sustain the growth trajectory there, is that the next big topic a year from now will be around IP and ownership. The whole OpenAI and current generative model thing is, and I said it before, is like the largest IP heist, public IP heist in history, and that people are going to be like continuing to get more angry about it. But I think in a year that's going to come to the forefront, and that a lot of these models and companies are going to need to compensate people for the data that they scrape and monetize on.
Interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to follow the music industry, right? That trend. Craig, how about you?
I was actually going to say the same as Cory. I think that the adoption is like it was so fast that everybody's starting to use it. I think like the kind of like hype, it'll just become the kind of like normal. It'll just become the norm of everyone. Again, within our company, like there's people, like most of the team are using it one way or form. Even people that I know that couldn't switch on a PlayStation are using ChatGPT and things like that to do stuff now. So I think it's like getting like used more and more. If one thing that I wish for that we could be talking about next year is just like the speed. I know like most will write out like things like fast, but what we're seeing is like if everybody's using ChatGPT at a point, it just like stalls. It's like using it. It's not a lot of the things that like we ask for ChatGPT, the speed isn't quite there. Like every now and then it could just be like irregular, and it just isn't quite like coming back in a user-friendly way. Let's put it that way.
Right.
People sitting in it makes it look like something else is stalled. So hopefully it's a little bit faster and we're not complaining as much.
Yeah, thanks. And Tom, lastly you, and then we should wrap it up.
Yeah, well, I just think that we're still at the, I kind of think of it as like a one-to-one relationship with ChatGPT. I think very few applications in the scope of things are using the APIs to any meaningful extent. But I think a year from now, what you're going to see is more of a meshed or even hub and spoke I think a year from now, a lot of it's going to be talked about these agents. I think AI agents is the next level. It brings in workflow. It brings in a full experience rather than just a single call. And so I think, you know, the calls is where the focus is today. I think it becomes in the coordination a year from now. We're talking about the coordination value of AI. It being the center point and coordinator, orchestrator of some other experience, rather than just speeding up single calls.
Yeah, great. That's really great. All right, we're almost out of, well, I guess we are out of time, but anybody have a last thought that they want to end on? And you know, I think this is a super important conversation. Really appreciate Cory and Craig and Tom kind of opening, you know, the kimono and talking about what they're doing individually. And again, all the other folks that participated on the call today. Again, you know, definitely, I don't know, Brandon, is there a way we can publish the chat? Do we publish the chat along with the recording? Because I think that's always an important, there's such a great dialogue going on. And I apologize to folks that we didn't get to in the chat because there's so much good questions. But anyway, just a great way to keep the conversation going as a community.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Next call is the first Thursday in September. It's going to be with Jason Posel from Greenlight. We're going to talk about worker misclassification and how it pertains to open talent platforms. So hopefully you can make it and spread the word. If you ever need anything, reach out to me. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Love you guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Bye.